Okay, the Transportation Advisory Committee meeting of Tuesday, January 15th, 2019 is called to order. Kim, would you call the roll, please?
Yep. Mr. Anderson?
Here.
Mr. Atkinson?
Here.
Mr. Jessic?
Here.
Mr. Lyman?
Here.
Mr. LaSalle?
Here.
Mr. McElmora?
Here.
Mr. Tong?
Here. Okay, the first item 2 is approval of the minutes of December 18th, 2018. Does anybody have any changes or additions to those minutes they'd like to make?
I just want to make one.
Yes.
It's on page 2. It's the second full bullet. And I may have said this, but I just want to correct it a little bit. It says, Mr. Anderson asked if there was a list of locations with site distance issues, whether we had listed them. And it says, Mr. Lewis said there isn't a list, which is true. But he and Jason are aware of the locations that have problems which require more attention. And if I said that, I think what I meant was when they're reported, we pursue them. We may know of some locations where there's concerns, but I kind of read it a little differently, so I'd like to change that a little bit.
Okay. Anything else? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passed.
You want to clarify?
Well,
With the
in the
change.
future, we should probably agree on what the change is before we pass it. But
Yeah, I didn't wordsmith it, to tell you the truth, but the base, yeah. Mr. Lewis said there isn't a list. But what I really think I'd like to say is, but when site distance issues are reported, Jason or the city will investigate those reports.
fine.
Okay. Item 3, agenda analysis. Does anybody have anything they want to change on the agenda or add to the agenda? None? Citizen comments, item 4, we have no citizens in attendance, so we don't have any of those. Item 5, new business discussion items. 5A, introduction of new TAC members, which reappointment of Henry McElroth, and welcome to Ray Atkinson for a at-large position. I don't have the time period. Do you have his time period here? That
3 years. The terms that
term
we're
of
serving?
his?
Yeah, I think they're both 3 years.
Yeah. So it's in that section, I should say.
January 1st, 2019 to December 31st, 2021 is Henry. And the same for Ray.
Okay. Well, now we have the item 5B, the chair and vice chair nominations. Now, does the voting have to be in writing? I don't think we've done it in writing before.
We have only done it by voice before.
That's what I thought. Does anybody have any objections to that? Okay, I'll take any nominations from the floor for the chair of the TAC.
If Henry would accept it, I'd move that we appoint Henry as chair. You've served for 2 terms, haven't you, Bob?
Yes. And I do not want to do it again. So. Said that years ago.
If nominated, I will run.
Any other nominations for chair? Okay, everybody in favor of Henry being the new chair, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, Henry, you got it.
Just by the skin of your teeth.
Yeah, right. Okay, now I'll take nominations for the vice chair.
Well, I'm going to nominate Bob just so we can trade.
Oh, no, let's get somebody else.
Okay.
Yeah.
How about Ed? Is Ed interested?
I'm not
Vice chair?
interested in vice chair.
What about John? I mean, would you do it?
I prefer not.
Somebody has to. Cedric?
It's always nice to have these conversations before the meeting. So you've got a plan. Clearly that didn't happen.
Sedemir.
I mean, I could, if nobody wants, I could do that.
All in favor of Sedemir being vice chair for the next 2 years, you say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay.
All right.
Congratulations.
We could change places right now if you wish.
Oh, you're doing fine.
I'll finish up this meeting and then. John, I'd like you to introduce Vance to the group, please, and give us maybe he can give us a bit of his background.
Yeah, so it's a pleasure to introduce, I was going to say Vance Tong, but no, a different Vance, named Vance Walker, who's now our new Assistant Public Works Director and is housed out at Operations. Vance comes to us with many years, 10 years of experience with the city of Tigard as their street supervisor, and then before that he was with the city of Lake Oswego for 4 years, I think, as their street supervisor. So got a lot of experience with public works, and he lives out off Redland Road, so he's close. He's on the right side of the river when the big earthquake hits, so we get him here. He's been here 2 weeks now, Jason. Has he made any mistakes yet?
Nothing really bad.
See how they stick up for each other?
He's just coming around to it. I think he's looking forward to well, I'll let him say this, but yeah, it's been good to have him here. He started on the 2nd, and yeah, he's just kind of getting warmed up to what we're doing, what we do around here, and how we might do it a little differently than Tiger does. So, yeah.
Pleasure to meet everybody. This is my first TAC meeting at the City of Tigard. They did have a traffic advisory committee. Typically in Tigard, the traffic engineer would attend those and be a part of that program. So this is my first TAC meeting. As John mentioned, 12 and a half years at the City of Tigard as street supervisor. About 4 years, City of Lake Oswego as the streets and stormwater supervisor. Prior to that, private sector construction, paving mainly. So I have a very good knowledge of streets-related activities. So I'm definitely looking forward to being a part of this group. And I think because of my history, work history as it pertains to streets, I think I'll be able to add, and I hope to be able to add to the conversations as it pertains to this group. Every day I get a little more comfortable in my position there here at Oregon City. Public Works has been very welcoming. I mentioned that in our safety meeting today to the whole group, and I really mean it. I know already that I have a very good support mechanism within operations, and yeah, I'm looking forward to becoming more accustomed to my role. It is a new position for me, but having worked in Public Works for many years, I have an idea of what's expected, some of the duties. I'm an assistant Public Works director, and for me, it was a good career move. As John mentioned, yep, I'm on the correct side of the river. In fact, I mentioned that in my interview. If the big one hits, I'm on the correct side of the river. And apparently it scored me some points.
Yeah.
So they hired me. At any rate, thanks again for having me, and I look forward to, again, being part of the group.
Welcome aboard.
Yeah, welcome aboard. We're glad to have you. Item 5D, dockless bike share or scooter share presentation.
Do you want to come out here and
I think that'd be better, right? And then say it's that red button, and then that just moves them forward and backwards. It'll take a bit for this to come down.
So while this is loading, I just wanted to provide a quick, even though it says CCC on it, we are currently in an exploration phase, so we're not planning on implementing it at this point. It's still researching it. So I wanted to clarify that before I start my presentation. And the presentation is about dockless bike share and scooter share in Clackamas County. And my name is Ray Atkinson. I'm the Transportation Systems Analyst at Clackamas Community College. This is a lot of information, but basically I'm sharing my background. I've had about 10 years of bike share experience, and now I'm starting to learn scooter share as well. So I just want to provide this as a background. One reason why CCC is pursuing this as a possible option is because our bike learner program, they're pedal-powered bikes, and as you know, Oregon City has hills. So we are looking at e-bikes to get people up the hills and down the hills. And also the renters are responsible for repairing and preventing theft. With the bike share and scooters, the companies would be responsible for that, so the users would not be. So that's a benefit of bike share and scooters. The transportation staff at the college is just me as full-time, and then there's a part-time employee, and we are not always in the office. So the bike share and scooters will be on the street, so it'll be a lot more accessible. I wanted to provide a definition of what I'm talking about before I get into more details. On the left, you see dock-based bike share, which is set stations. And on the right, you see dockless bike share, which this is a jump bike, and it can be locked to any bike rack or anywhere else with the, let's see if this works, with this lock here. So it locks to bike racks, and so it does not need a dock or station, so it's free floating. With scooter share, this scooter from Scoot is the name of the company. They have ability to be locked to bike racks. Most scooter companies currently do not have this ability, so this is one reason why I've been pursuing this as an option. And they do not have docks or stations as well as free floating. This gives you the idea of how many existing planned bike share programs exist in the country currently. There's a lot. So Oregon City we have plenty of opportunity to learn from other cities what they're doing. And this is worldwide. China actually has some of the largest bike share systems in the world. So it's not just the US. So there's a lot of experience out there.
Ray, quick question.
Yep.
So what do the different symbols mean up there? Some look like question marks or different colors and the like.
Yeah, the question marks, there's a legend on it, which I did not copy, but I believe it means that it may not be implemented yet. It's a question mark, so it's unknown. And then the red marks mean, I believe, the system was closed down or there's an issue with it. This is from a live map on the website, so it's updated whenever things happen. The green systems are live systems.
So can you go back to the north? There we go. So I didn't catch that the first time around. So the question marks are maybe not yet established. They're thinking about it? Is that right?
Probably in planning stage.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's a lot of question marks up there.
A lot of green bikes, too.
A lot of green bikes.
Yeah, too. Next.
Are those guys on the border really riding along the border wall? Is that what we
The Border Patrol has got bikes now.
Bike share program? All right.
I just want to provide a quick overview of grants. Reason why we're pursuing grants is not actually to fund the bike share scooters, but to fund the public engagement process and the planning and mapping analysis. So the bike share scooters would actually be free to the city or to the college. It would be users who would be paying for it. So we're going to clarify the reason why we're pursuing grants. This came up from the city of Milwaukee. City Council was just exploring giving permission to the staff to pursue this more. So that's the reason why I was in a rush to get over here. But they had a lively discussion with the City Council tonight, and it sounds like I didn't get the official word from them because I had to leave early, but it sounds like they're still pursuing this as an option in the city of Milwaukee. And since CCC has a campus in Milwaukee, we're looking at partnering with the city for that. And also Clackamas County, because the college is located actually in the county property, not the city out there. And the project is focused on first and last mile issues, basically from TriMet to getting to places. So when people are finding out how to get from Max or from the bus to get places, this would be a good option. And we're looking at using an equity lens because most users currently have been white, male, and wealthy. So looking at increasing the diversity of users is something that the college sees as important.
A question? When you're talking about first and last mile, in regards to having to put your bike on the bus and carrying up, and that bus only being able to carry 2 or 3, then 14 people could be using something like this more easily.
The bikes and scooters should not be used on TriMet. They should be parked before people get on. That's one thing. When I was in the DC region as a bike share planner there were some bikes that were on the bus there. They pay for it while you're on the bus, so you pay for whether you're on the bus or not. So it's economical for people to stop and park it before you get on the bus, and that's how most people use it. So there should not be an issue with bike share bikes being put on the bus. So, good question though. I'm sharing this because I didn't know Portland is more bike friendly than Oregon City or Milwaukee, but it shows the potential for when you bring bike share scooters to increase the usage of bikes in these areas. Like you have the Troy Trail here and the I-205 path, and then the Clackamas River Trail here. So, and Willamette River Trail. So there's a lot of potential for biking that could increase with this. And bike share scooters is seen as usually a gateway drug to bikes. It's kind of weird to say drug, but it's once you get into bike share, usually you buy your own bike, so it's seen as a gateway to that. And this is possibly seen as potential for that. I wanted to provide some benefits of scooters and bikes, health benefits, economics. There's a lot of benefits. So I just wanted to provide this as a slide so you can review it. As you know, there's a lot of issues that have been reported in the news. So the next few slides, I'm going to show some potential ways to overcome those issues. But first, I want to show that there are concerns about parking of the dockless bike share scooters, the equity issues, as mentioned earlier. Since these bike share and scooter companies use apps, they require credit cards. And so I'm trying to find a way to allow people to use it without using a credit card. And one way, I've been working to try possibly having a hop card, which is used for transit, to possibly use hop card for bike share and scooters. So that's one thing I'm possibly looking at working on. Also locating bikes and scooters without the app, because currently to be able to find the bikes and scooters, you have to be able to have a smartphone. So possibly being able to text your location to the operator to get bikes and scooters nearby. I believe I saw that in the DC region that they're doing that. I don't know if they're doing it out here, but it's one thing I'm exploring as well. So resolving parking issues. Lime is one company that does this, and they use these recommended parking spots that they show their users when they're using the app. And I don't know the compliance with that, but that's something they're trying to do to encourage better behavior of the users. And they have geofencing as well to basically say this is where we want you to park. So it encourages good usage of parking. They also have a painted area, which I don't know if the city wants to do this. I'm just showing this as an option. Many cities have put out these painted areas where they prefer people to park on the sidewalk. And this is for both bikes and scooters. As you see here, this is in Arlington, Virginia, and this is on street. So basically they take a car parking space and designate it for bikes and scooters. And as I mentioned earlier with Jump, they are locked to bike racks. So this is my preferred option because it's using existing infrastructure and you know where people are going to be parking it. And as I mentioned earlier, Scoot has a locking mechanism to bike racks as well. This is a lot of information here. I just wanted to show that there's a lot of regulations that cities are doing to prepare for, and when bikes and scooters come in, they can have better regulations. For example, rights of removal, preparation for termination, liability issues, geofencing boundaries, so where the bikes will be located. So there's a lot of regulations that probably is not currently in the city's codes or in the regulations, but this is something that I'd like to explore as we proceed with this in the future. And process, this is just a quick, it's complicated, so this is just a quick overview of it. But currently we're in the feasibility stage, looking at public engagement and service area, defining how far this, whether City of Oregon City is going to be included or if it's just going to be City of Milwaukee to start with. So looking at the service area, and then as we proceed, looking at regulations and permit programs and doing public engagement for that as well. And then having request for proposals for the operators to have them bid on it. And then signing contracts with them as they provide these RFPs. And I want to provide some time for discussion, because I'm sure you have some questions.
What's the cost on these things? I mean, scooters and bikes, like what's average cost per mile or per minute, or how does that work?
Yeah, for the city side of it, it's free. The companies do not charge for the city or the campus. For the user side of it, it varies from company to company, but I believe it's about $1 for activating it, for like basically to unlock it. And then I think it's like maybe 10 cents per minute or something like that. I have to look at exact numbers, but it varies from company to company. But know that the pedal powered only is cheaper than the electric assist. So some companies have both options. And then scooters and bikes are about the same cost, I believe. I can get you those numbers if,
I have a question. It's called Bike Share. Can you describe how it would be shared between 2 or 3 different people? And how do you know it's going to be when you come out of your workplace? It's going to be there when you get back.
Yeah. Meaning of sharing means that you don't take a bike into your home. It's just sharing with other people. So it's not like a bike rental program where you rent a bike for the whole day and you keep it and you just lock it up and keep it with you. Bike sharing, usually you want to lock it within 20 minutes, within 30 minutes, and then allow someone else to use it. So it promotes short trips, and it's different from a rental program. And usually you don't keep it for like long term, like you don't keep it overnight or in your home. So it's staying on the street, like at a bike rack or a designated parking location. So that's how it's different from like a private bike or a bike rental program.
But you could ride a shared bike out to the shopping center, do your shopping, come out and find out you don't have a bike to ride home.
Correct. That is a possibility. One thing that a lot of cities try to do is increase the cap limit on how many bikes and scooters provided, and also have a mobility hub where you designate an area that you want it to focus most of the bikes and scooters to be rebalanced, which rebalancing basically means if a bike is biked down the law or something like that, then the bike should be returned by the people who are paid by the companies to rebalance them to another location. And through when the city works with the vendor, then they will decide on where the rebalancing will happen. So hopefully through that, then it will more likely be bikes and scooters available where you want them. And that'll be determined through like public engagement and the city when they do like a contract with the companies. So there's ways to encourage the bikes and scooters to be in certain areas. Yeah.
Is there any track record on percentage of the bikes that become vandalized, or in the case of Portland, the last time dumped in the river?
It's still an ongoing issue. I know, especially in Portland, they've had bikes, and scooters put into the Willamette River. that's probably still going to happen. Hopefully here, since we're further away from the touristy area, there's still the museums, but it's less tourist than like downtown. So hopefully there'll be more people who know how to use bikes and use scooters, and they won't be trying to trash it. They'll feel it's their own. And that's one thing that hopefully through this, people will feel like they're taking ownership of it rather than just as a touristy thing. So I think it'll be behavior change basically is what I think will need to happen to resolve those issues.
I have a couple questions. In your research, do you have a feeling for, would you foresee the bike share program existing in one component on the lower level of Oregon City and then another one on the upper? And if not, then I'm just curious on the electric assist, would they really make it up the hill?
Yeah, good question. The rebalancing would probably be determining that where if all the bikes are being brought down to downtown and not being ridden back up, then we can look at how rebalancing would happen. I know whenever a lot of these are done like commute basis. So when I was in the DC region, a lot of people would commute from like the suburbs in Maryland and Virginia and then bring them downtown, and they wouldn't bring them back. And there they rebalanced the bikes back out to the suburbs. So they know that this commute shed happens where people commute and they're not going to go back home until the end of the day. So a lot of these companies have experience with doing that, and I think that they would be able to work with the city and other partners to resolve that issue.
What about the electric assist?
One reason why at least college is pursuing the electric assist part is so people who do live in downtown Oregon City and want to commute to CCC and we're at the top of the hill, then they can use electric assist. And it's about 10 to 15 miles per hour, so it goes pretty fast for a which I don't know if it slows down the hill, but I believe the battery is pretty good, and the range is about 20 to 30 miles, I believe, on a charge. So it's fully charged, and it can definitely get you up to the top of the hill. And that's what we're hoping through CCC is to people who live in downtown can use bike share or scooters to get up the hill without using a car. So it reduces, hopefully, people congesting Malala Avenue.
Do you have a feeling for how many people that would be?
That I've not researched yet. I do know that even though Portland is a bigger city, they had 700,000 riders or 700,000 trips over their 4-month pilot period during their scooter thing last, I think it was from August till November or something like that, last fall. So it's, and that's, I think they have like 700,000 people in Portland. So
well, I guess my question is, I would be asking, I know there's lots of benefits to it, and I won't dispute those, but if you're looking at it for CCC specifically, you might want to know how many people you're talking about that do live at the bottom that would commute to the top. And of those, then how many would actually use a bicycle?
Yeah. I will say I do some data analysis at CCC, and the way we've done our current student data is zip code data, and 97045 is a huge zip code.
Yes, it is.
So unlike Portland, where you have zip codes that are really small and you can see where people live in the city, it's not possible out here. So there's really no way for me to determine where people live in the city for using student data because everything is zip code level. So that's an unfortunate thing about our privacy issues.
I see it as a struggle, I think, maybe for a bike share company to really operate in kind of suburbia. You do have hill, that's a challenge, but I think that can be overcome but I don't know that, if I live kind of in a subdivision that's on the outskirts of Oregon City, trying to get, let's say, to a Fred Meyer to do some shopping, how am I going to find my bike out? It's not going to be there. I think it's going to be a challenge for them to kind of spread enough these devices in order for people to just walk out of their subdivision, go to a nearest block and grab one of these things and run to a store.
I'd be looking at a round trip option so that I knew I could get home.
Sorry about that.
And I will mention with the starter trip in the more residential area, a lot of those areas don't have bike racks, and property owners are probably not going to want to have bikes or scooters parked on a private property. So, and some of them don't have sidewalks. So there's going to be part of this is getting people to use this, and then the infrastructure will also show where people are actually using it, so we can install sidewalks and bike racks and bike lanes and infrastructure that will support this. Because I know that is not really existing yet, especially in suburban areas. So it's sort of the, sort of like the bridge analogy with, do you put it in a bridge where no one's crossing the bridge, but crossing a river? There's no bridge yet. It's similar here where, there may not be bike racks or bike lanes, but once there's users to show the need for it, then we can prioritize where we want to put investments. And that will help us with, at least from my point of view, with planning for those investments.
Quick question. On your chart that showed the creation of regulations, you listed all those cities.
Yeah.
Anyone there that you're familiar with would be like best practice in terms of from a city standpoint and doing the regulations?
It varies. I will say from my experience, I've worked in DC, Washington, DC. I was born and raised in North Carolina in Charlotte, so I've worked on that one. And then Portland, I've followed that as it's been in process. And those are, they're doing pretty well. I think some of the things I'd focus on with this is the data sharing element, because that's where you get data or get the more.
And to know.
Yeah, and some of them don't have the bike symbols mean that they have it. So like Portland is not applicable, which that was during their, I'm not sure why it's not applicable, but that's something that I think is important with when you're doing planning. And then you see this allowed initial fee of 500 bikes or more. This is with the capping that I was mentioning earlier. So the more bikes and scooters you have available, the more likely that they'll be available when you park and then come back out. So you won't be stranded. So the higher bikes and scooters availability you have, the more likely you have it to be there when you come out. But also it creates concern when a lot of cities have of clutter with having too many bikes and scooters on the sidewalks. So it's a balancing act. I don't know what the right number is, but I think that's one thing we'll have to research as we go forward about what cap we want to have. And the lower cap you have, the less availability there will be, but also means there'll be less clutter, less likely to be clutter. So that's definitely a balancing act.
That kind of gets to a question I had, that in all these instances, it's private companies that have the bikes, correct?
Yes, except for DC has a Capital Bike Share is publicly funded.
Oh, okay.
So, and it's station based. They also have Dockless Bike Share and scooters. They have pretty much everything there. Which
if you've ever driven through DC, you understand why they're looking for alternative modes of transportation.
Across the nation.
I think this is, since it says pilot up here, I think this is the bike share pilot. So it's not referring to Capital Bike Share. So it's only specifically to the Dockless Bike Share.
But where I was going with this is that if you have private companies, I mean, obviously they have to measure their success by how many people are using their bikes.
Correct.
Are you aware of incidents where a city, for example, has, say, 3 companies, and then one says, hey, I'm not making enough money, and they just pull their bikes out? I mean, does that happen? Or how does it work? Does the city put out contracts and say we're only having 3 contracts, or does it vary from city to city?
Yep. First part, several companies have actually left the whole U.S. actually. OFO and Spin, and they're basically Chinese companies. They didn't like the regulations that we have in the U.S. Because I guess Chinese companies, or China doesn't have as much regulations as the U.S. does. So they left about, I think it was last year. And they were in Dallas and Seattle and other cities. So now the Lime and other companies, they still are here. And the way that basically through the negotiation with the cities, they're able to determine how economic it is for the cities to, or for the companies to operate. And that basically is determined by the cost of the permits and how much the user fees are. And we'll have to look at more in detail. It varies from city to city, but it seems like most of the companies are staying now, and it's probably because the regulations are not as strict as they were, or because the bikes are actually more, they'll last longer. Because a lot of these Chinese companies, they had bikes that basically thrown away. They had cheap bikes. So that's another reason why some of the companies would leave.
So does the city make money?
It varies from contract to contract. I know that Portland, with their pilot program, I just saw the presentation tonight that they charged money, and I think got like $200,000 from the scooter companies, but due to the cost of permitting and the overhead and all that, and then creating the report they just released today, they had about $280,000 that they spent, so they actually lost money. But that was probably because there's a lot of data analysis on the front end they had to do and getting it all set up. So over the long term, I think that they will actually either come out even or save money. But yeah, starting up a program, depending on whether you outsource it to a company to do the data analysis, because there's a lot of companies that do the data analysis, or do in-house, will make it change, vary by how much money the city actually has to pay for regulating and data analysis and all that. So I don't know how much time I have, so I just...
A question that I have when looking at your chart and noticing something, could it be that the bike users and the scooter users are self-selecting, because it seems like if you don't have a smartphone, you're out of luck?
Yes. Yeah, right now...
It plays to the wealthy white male.
Yeah.
That's why I'm working so hard on the equity part of it, and working with TriMount and using a hop card, and also using other ways to access it, because a lot of them use QR codes, and to be able to scan a QR code, you need a smartphone. And I don't know how much flexibility the companies have with changing that, because right now it's limiting on who will use it, and having equity is definitely something that's important to me and to college.
It's kind of expensive. I used it in San Diego, and it's not that. I mean, it's the bus is definitely way cheaper option, or walking, than using one of those devices.
From what I heard from Portland when they presented tonight at City Milwaukee, they said that they're looking at it as competing with Uber and Lyft, because it's cheaper than getting rideshare, and they do recognize that it is more expensive than using the bus. So it's and there most likely will be low-income fare programs similar to what TriMet has, with having 50% off, or 75. I think it's like 73% off on TriMet fares with low-income fare program. So a similar program, I think, will exist with this, where if you can show that you have like a EBT card or affordable housing, then you can get a discount for using these systems.
But I imagine the city or somebody would have to pay for that. Or, I mean...
Usually the vendors would have that as the option when you're paying for it. So it'd be in a contract. When the city signs a contract with the operator, they can say that, we require you to have this low-income fare.
Oh, okay.
So it'd be a regulation, that basically a requirement they'd have with the contract.
Ray, that was great. We fielded a lot of questions there, so you know quite a bit about this. I think we're pretty fortunate to have Ray right here at our fingertips now. So thanks for doing all that. I guess just a reminder about a couple of things. Because Ray is working where he's working and pursuing these grants, I guess it has potential for Oregon City. We're not necessarily at this time haven't made a decision to pursue it. In fact, I think we're leaning more in the direction of, I don't know if you remember, but we announced that we had kind of those last mile shuttle program through Clackamas County, that we got the grant for that, which is kind of first year is analysis to figure out how we're going to do that, and then buying buses or buying these small buses, and then actually implementing the program. There's a kind of a 2 to 3 year ramp up process on that. but we want to focus our attention on that. From a staffing perspective, we don't have a lot of time to commit to this program. So we talked about when we met with Ray earlier that, we probably ought to stay focused on that and then watch how maybe if it's Milwaukee or some of these other kind of more urban cities do with this program. I mean, there's hills in Portland, by the way. So sometimes Portland feels flat just because, but it's not. And it's still, these programs are still pretty successful there. So I think the topography thing, I think the big problem we have is density or lack thereof, right? So the programs that I think work better is where you have the docking station, so that there's, if it's at the community college or if it's at the county offices or, maybe something here and, pick those key locations, transit centers. But, I just want to make sure that folks know that great information. I think it's pretty interesting where it's going. I see how effective it is in Portland, especially the scooters. They're pretty crazy, it seems like, in Portland. And I hear they're coming back. So it'll be, I think, a good time to watch that. From our perspective, we're trying to reduce peak hour trips in our town, right? And this may be one of those solutions. I just think it's a little young, and maybe we let it get some maturity before we get too far down the road with a program of our own. But it does make sense to watch Milwaukee. I hope that they're successful there. I think they have some leadership there that's a little more excited about biking. So there you go.
I want to add one clarification to the docking stations. They would be publicly funded probably, like in DC region with Capital Bike Share. They cost about $25,000 per station, and then you have to pay for the bikes, and it gets expensive. And in DC region, they're publicly funded through grants and federal grants and state grants. So I don't know if that's in the anything we're looking at doing. I just wanted to throw it out there. One reason why I'm pursuing dockless bike share and scooters is because there's no investment from the city or from the college to pay for that through tax dollars or through student fees. So it's a lot cheaper. Yeah. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you, Ray. That was interesting. The next item is 5E, Public Works Report. John?
Okay, thank you. So I'll try to hit these in order. I included an informational sheet that came from ODOT for the tunnel illumination project. So if I can't remember if we've shared information about this, but on 99E near where the railroad crosses, there's a tunnel there, right? That's 99E tunnel. And their project is to add illumination inside the tunnel, both in the pedestrian tunnel, which is alongside that, and the vehicle tunnel. They're also going to be adding a electronic message board for vehicles coming down 99E or coming northbound on 99E to warn them of congestion at Main Street and 99E. So that was a requirement of the development plan for Willamette Falls Legacy Project, the thinking being that as that project moves forward, more and more congestion is going to happen at that intersection, and generally drivers drive too fast down 99E and they get to the tunnel and there's congestion there. Sometimes it's hard to see because you're coming around the corner and there's problems there, and they just wanted this reader board to be a safety measure, essentially. In the packet, I don't think we had, this isn't loaded up as a PowerPoint, is it?
No, it's in our packet.
Okay, so in your packet, there's also one other little piece to this project, which was a decision to close the Tumwater access. Currently, you can, as you're driving south on 99E up the hill, you can make a left turn onto Tumwater Drive in between the Moot and the
military.
Legion Hall.
VFW.
VFW Hall, thank you. So VFW Hall right there, so you can make that left turn and head right up to South Second. And this project, by way of signage and striping, is intending to prohibit that turn. And so we'll see how that is. There's in your packet some other signage as you're going up 99E. That won't be reader board signage necessarily, but it'll be mounted on the reader board. It's just basically letting you know that you can only make a turn on South Second.
John, is there a reason why they're closing that street? Have there been accidents?
It has been a safety issue for some time now. So, ODOT is always in the business of limiting access on and off their roadways. They like to keep it more controlled intersections. And so they've been for years wanting to do that. And I'm not quite sure why it was left open originally. The reason why we're not closing it with the hard barrier is because if there's accident on 99E between South Second and say South End Road, those are the two main ones, that stretch of highway as you leave Oregon City through Kenema. There's been a fair amount of closures along there. Almost every year we have a closure because of a rockfall project along there. And so when they close that, and if it's planned closure, they usually send the message out to the trucking community and trucks avoid that stretch. But if it's an emergency closure, we still get trucks in there, and South End Road is load limited. So the idea would be they would come up the hill to South Second, make a left on South Second, and we basically use Tumwater as a turnaround. We've never done that, but that's the emergency response plan for that level. And that's why we're not completely closing it with, say, a landscape barrier or something like that.
I guess the other message on this one is there's a variety of closures. And in the brochure, I should probably just read through them in case our large TV viewing audience might want to know about that. So they talk about short-term full closures. All traffic through the tunnel may be restricted for 20-minute windows at night between 10 p.m. and 4:30 a.m. They're going to try and limit those. Obviously, it's an ODOT facility, so they know what the impacts of those kind of closures are. But there may be times when they need to do that just for the safety of the workers that are in the tunnel. Nighttime single lane closures. I expect this more often during Monday through Thursday night, 7 p.m. to 6 a.m. Friday night, 7 p.m. to 9 a.m. Saturday night, 6 p.m. to 10 a.m. and Sunday night, 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. So I don't know why there's so much variability in those times, but they're going to do that. And then possibly some daytime lane closures. Well, definitely lane closures. Daytime single lane closures, construction may be required for a single lane closure between weekdays from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. And then it'll always be open for pedestrians that need to use the tunnel. Well, not always. There's a period of time when they're actually going to be working in the tunnel where they're probably going to have to close that. But I think, I'm trying to remember, I'm not seeing it here. I think the last page has got a email and website that folks can get to learn more about the project. So, and some of these timing restrictions will be listed there. So that's it, unless you got questions about that. Then, lost my place here. The next item, Malala Avenue update. I think I gave you one of these before. Things haven't changed much. Surveyors are still out there, so you may have seen them out there. Our first open house is scheduled for March, so more to come on that, but we're going to do pretty extensive mailer and public outreach for folks that want to chime in on that.
John,
Yeah.
do you have any idea when the fire station's going to be done and they're going to be out of there?
That's a good question, Henry. I don't have an answer for it. I don't know the timeline for that one.
It's kind of hard to get in and out of the post office sometimes when that semi's out there in the center lane blocking things and you can't see what's going on.
Oh, yeah, I hadn't really noticed that.
We can get an answer for you though.
It looks like it's close. Good documents.
Yeah, it does. I'd be glad to get it done.
Just hit the staff report.
So Malala, nothing's really changed there from what we've been talking about. Annual tree trimming. Jason, you want to talk about your annual tree trimming? You got something
Yes.
in there that I don't know about?
No, this is the time of year when we do most of the lion's share of our tree trimmings right now. When the leaves are off, it's much easier to trim right now. And we're going through and preparing the neighborhoods for the slurry seal. Now's the time to do that. And I think that the slurry seal maps have been attached at some point in here, but yeah, so that's what we're doing right now. We'll probably trim somewhere in the neighborhood of 400 to 500 trees in the next couple of months.
One thing I'll say about our pavement maintenance this year is that program's going to look a lot smaller this year because we're planning to fund a lot of the Malala project because we anticipate a lot of pavement reconstruction work on Malala Avenue. So there's a couple $1 million that will help fund that Malala Avenue project. So we're not spending as much money on our annual projects, although we will be doing our annual slurry seal. It's maybe a little smaller, but not much.
It's 90,000 square yards this year. Last year was right around 100,000. So it's over the last 10 years or so, we've been between that 80 to 100,000 right in there somewhere.
So the maps are included in your packet of the streets that Jason's got planned for slurry seal. They're all in there, Jason. So if you got any questions about that, we can.
Yeah, it's a quick one here.
Yeah.
On the last page, you have listed slurry seal, chip seal, rehab, and under rehab you have none. But I didn't see that blue chip seal anyplace on any of those.
So we've been kind of bouncing those roads around.
Okay.
The original roads that I wanted to do both have projects of one kind or another. So I've kind of been looking at different roads. I still think it's something that we want to do.
Okay,
I still would like to, but I need to nail that down with John before we.
thanks.
Yeah, we pulled the carpet out from under Jason on. I remember we were gonna do Warner Parrott.
Yeah, all of Warner Parrott, and then we were going to do Lynn from Park up to Warner Parrott. But there's projects associated with both of those roads this year.
Yeah.
And just a little side note, probably about 25% of the slurry seal that we're doing this year is stuff that was done in the 2008, 2009 years. I'm sure you've all seen how the arcs on the way that the pavements deteriorate. And so we're getting about 10 years out of a slurry seal, which is actually a really good number for a slurry seal. And then we're going back in, and on these roads, we're just re-crack sealing them. We crack sealed them last year, and we're going to slurry seal them this year. And we're not having to do any structural repairs to those roads that were slurry sealed in 2008, 2009. And a lot of those roads, I'd say we're at about 50% of the 2008 roads. So the other 50% aren't even ready for another slurry seal yet. So we're getting 10, 11 years out of these roads. So those are good numbers. That means that whoever was doing their job back in 2008 did a good job of picking the right roads at the right time.
So the one thing that we are going to do this year with our pavement maintenance dollars, and by the way, I think we're also going to, beyond the chip seal, we're probably going to do some reconstruction work, most likely associated with the Hazelwood Sewer Project. So by the time we're done with that neighborhood and the excavation work that we've been doing, we've been looking at those roads. There's some in that neighborhood that I anticipate us probably trying to cover, while at the same time making sure we're setting aside enough money for the Malala Avenue project. And if you remember the Malala Avenue project, since I don't think I mentioned it, we anticipate that project starting in the spring of 2020. So we'll be designing all year for that project and starting probably a water line project first, and then finishing the pavement work. And it'll probably be pretty tight on getting the paving done in the kind of the fall, winter of 2020. So it may go a little longer than that, but that's our intent. So this 5-year pavement maintenance plan, if you remember, there's concerted effort to use what we call our pavement management system, which is more of a 10,000 foot level look at all of our pavement conditions. They actually look much closer. They evaluate our streets every 3 years, and then we use that data to try and project which streets are most likely to need the different forms of treatment. And then anything that's kind of suggested for reconstruction, we take that and we pair it up with things like TriMet service. We pair it up with things like utility work, and we try to get a much more certain understanding based on how much money we think we're going to have to spend any particular year to map out 5 years worth of projects. And so we'll do that again. This was the 3rd generation of that. So we'll be updating that. And we've pretty much worked our way through most of the projects on the last 5-year plan. So that's a good effort. It forces us to look at the utilities as well, so that some streets may be needing street work, but if we don't have enough money for the utility work, we may have to make either the decision to pave over the old utilities or try to find funding to upgrade the utilities. But if you remember, for the pavement maintenance plan, that was one of the community concerns when we adopted that fee, was we don't want you to pave a street and then 2 years later have to dig it up again because of the utility needs. So we've been fortunate so far, but it's getting harder and harder for us to find those streets that don't have problem utilities underneath them.
So when is an evaluation of the utility fees going to come up so we can stay ahead of it on the utilities?
Both water and sewer, both water and stormwater are coming up. But it's kind of a balance act, as you know.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's hard to afford all your needs.
I'm
right.
glad it's your job and not mine.
Oh, I thought you were going to come and speak on behalf of higher utility rates.
Well, now, speaking of somebody...
Control yourself.
One other thing that's not on this list, but I wanted to mention it because I sat through a meeting today that kind of made me think. So planning is moving forward with the project for the Beaver Creek Road concept plan. And, you know, the Beaver Creek Road concept plan finally made it through a variety of legal challenges. And then we passed the alternate mobility study for Beaver Creek Road. So that's kind of opened the door for moving that process forward. And planning is wanting to actually adopt zoning for that area. So right now it's all county zoned. I think it's R10 or I don't remember what the zoning across the whole site is. It probably varies a little bit, but so planning is trying to go through that effort, which would include zoning and probably code amendments to help implement that plan as development annexations happen, or those that are already annexed kind of are developed. And so it's really a planning project, but because of the biggest problems out there are provision of water service and transportation, right? Roads, yeah, bigger roads, right? We need to move more traffic is what that thing is. And probably bikes too, for bikes and scooters out there probably. So there's, if you remember in the TSP, there's a lot of projects out in that area. And so, yeah, the main point is on January 29th, there'll be more information on this, but on January 29th, they're proposing to have their first public meeting out at the high school. And what I didn't get was the time of that meeting. But if you're interested in that, send me or Kim an email and we can make sure you get the details on that. Because I do think that this group should kind of be in tune with that. They talked about a pretty quick timeline. They got a grant to do this work, And, you know, grants are beautiful and all, but sometimes all of a sudden you find out you've got a whole new workload that you weren't anticipating, and that's kind of how I'm feeling about this one. But at the same time, it's important work. So
But you're just going to dump that on Vance, right?
maybe, yeah, I might.
Thanks, Vance.
That's all I have.
Next item is communications. I have this one for Vance. I live on Oak Tree Terrace, and that's one of the streets that they do the anti-icing compound coating on in anticipation of icy roads. And John has always had them do a courtesy de-icing of my steep driveway. And so,
True. That's not true. This is being recorded, Bob.
it was worth a try. Does anybody have any communications they'd like to put forward? Anybody?
I think based on that last comment, we're going to fire you as our chairman.
Okay. Anybody have any future agenda items they'd like to put forward?
What's
With that,
Could you remind us all what the process is going to be? Because if I recall from the last email or something about we're resoliciting the openings for the TAC committee. So what we're doing there?
I can probably give you enough to be dangerous. Maybe Kim knows a little bit more, but whether it's been posted or not, I'm not sure. But the city recorder, just like they did before, will repost that. And so we'll see what the candidate pool looks like. And as soon as we have, well, really at least one, we'll probably bring them in for interviews. And what I did kind of get from Katie that there may be a list of folks that maybe applied for one group, weren't interested, but were still interested in volunteering. So trying to figure out if they're really passionate about, transportation. If they're all about historic preservation, they're probably not that interested in transportation. So just trying to find the right match for that.
Sure.
And then the same thing, we'd have somebody, we'd do an interview and make a determination. And then if you want to make that recommendation that they be appointed, then then the mayor would consider that.
I do have one question, and that probably can't be answered tonight, but when are the goals, commission goals and whatnot, are there any new changes or anything in that direction? And do we need to consider our stuff in regards to that?
Well, yes, you need to consider that in commission goals or in theory, what kind of guides some of our work. A lot of their goals aren't transportation related, but the city commission retreat is on February 1st and 2nd. It's a Friday. I believe it starts at 1 and then goes through Friday evening and then starts up again Saturday morning at 8 and goes till 5.
So
if they need all that time. So those are public meetings. By the way, we're meeting at Providence Willamette Falls Education Center, which is at 15th and Washington. We're on the second floor. So it's, public meeting. They don't video record that meeting, but they audio record that meeting. So there's another option there. And the transportation related goals that I'm recalling are quiet zone through Oregon City, so railroad quiet zone, and that involves public works. And I think they're wanting us to put together a plan that would be approved by the railroad and ODOT Rail, and then a financing strategy for how that would be completed. So that's one transportation option or transportation issue. There's a lot of economic development goals, or a few. None of them are specific necessarily to any one particular transportation issue, but there's, it's a lot about Beaver Creek Road and implementation of that Park Place concept plan and economic development in the downtown. So those all have transportation kind of elements to them, but they're not really. So I'm trying to think if we've got the Ops Center, which I know you guys are all caring about, but it's not a huge transportation impact. Malala Avenue, Myers Road, those are both goals for them to get those built. So
we could probably expect more definitive explanation at the next meeting.
I can do that. Yeah, that'd be better. Yep. Thanks, Henry.
Okay, well, I'd like to thank everybody for helping me with this Transportation Advisory Committee for the last 4 years. It's been a pleasure, and from a lot of help from you guys keeping me on the straight and narrow many times.
So you're going to continue helping me, aren't you?
Yeah, well, depends on how nice you are to me. This meeting is adjourned.